A new book is tracing the political history of the American left that brought us into the age of debates over Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. It turns out that history goes back further than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders. It's called We've Got People, From Jesse Jackson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The End of Big Money and the Rise of a Movement. Back here with me now is the author of that book, Ryan Grimm. Ryan, this is really so interesting. First of all, why did you want to write this book right now?
You know, I actually decided to write it, I don't know if I should admit this or not, the day after Ocasio-Cortez won. I'd been kicking this book around and kind of working on it for a decade, really since 2010, after covering Wall Street reform, after covering the ACA, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, all of those fights where the left and the center of the party came together, and what resulted was those legislative achievements and then also the Tea Party wave that wiped them right back out. And so I couldn't really put it together as a book for all those years because there wasn't really a protagonist. You know, as Elizabeth Warren started rising and started calling party leaders out, that got people interested in that element of the conversation. When Bernie Sanders in 2015 and 2016 kind of galvanized this affected generation, you know, again, you sort of had that energy, but it wasn't clear if that was just Bernie, a flash in the pan, and then things were going to go back to usual. But then when AOC won her primary, it's like, oh, people are going to finally care about this.
So could you just give us sort of some broad brushstrokes? I know you go into obviously a lot of detail in the book about this, but how do you draw that connection from what we saw in the 1980s with Jesse Jackson to today, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez?
I mean, some of it is quite direct. I mean, basically the only two prominent-ish white liberals who endorsed Jesse Jackson were Bernie Sanders, who was then Burlington mayor, and Paul Wellstone, who was then just a professor in Minnesota, who then 2 years later won a shock Senate election. And a lot of the people that worked on Jackson's 84 and 88 campaigns, actually they themselves wound up having progressive careers in which they were constantly in conflict with the party establishment. But the ideas that he ran on are what are most important for the book. And that's the idea that, look, yes, okay, the New Deal coalition's falling apart in the 60s, 70s, and with Reagan. But the answer is not to just go to Wall Street and raise a lot of money and then throw in a little tiny bit of racism and try to compete with Republicans. That's not going to get you there. Instead, what Jesse Jackson was saying is there can be this rainbow coalition, progressive whites, blacks, Hispanics, LGBT community, who all stand for the same things and work in coalition and expand the electorate and rely on people power rather than money. That was kind of rejected by the Clinton wing of the party.
And I want to play a clip from a speech that Jesse Jackson gave at a Philadelphia church. This is in 1984. Let's listen to that.
Every morning, if you look at television, Chuck, you see the economic index on Wall Street. We're called as leaders not just to study the Wall Street economic index, but to study the misery index, yes, and the danger index at the bottom. There are not enough Wall Street analysts to elect us to anything. And if they could, they wouldn't vote for us. All right.
What is so striking to you, Ryan, over the course of researching this book, with that kind of rhetoric as we heard it in 1984 to what we're hearing today?
Well, and especially in his campaigns, as you showed there, he talked a lot about the term economic violence. You know, and I interviewed him recently, and he said something interesting, which he said, if we would have democratized the economy, then there wouldn't have been any room for Trump. And it was interesting to me that even all these years later, he went back to democratizing the economy itself. And we've spent all of this time, spilled all of this ink, so many miles of reels talking about the economic anxiety of white working class voters. But we're long past the place where Democrats can really make a pitch on that argument and be heard.
You think it's too late?
I don't think it's never too late, and they're trying to do it now, and they should always try to do it. But they spent 30 years with kind of a pro-Wall Street agenda, which makes it impossible to kind of make that populist pitch. And what Jesse Jackson was saying, ironically, he was the one that was saying, no, the working class all has the same agenda. White, black, brown, we're all in this together. We're all suffering economic violence at the hands of the elites, at the hands of these trade deals. There was a farm crisis going on at the time, and so he had genuine support on the ground from farmers. It was something that, looking back on it, was hard to even believe that was possible. But the things that he's saying now are kind of the same things that Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez and Warren are running on today. But it's like there was this 30 years wasted time in the middle of chasing corporate money and muddling the Democratic message in the process.
You spent a lot of time in the book talking about Rahm Emanuel.
Yes.
What does he symbolize to you?
Yeah, he's a perfect symbol, but he's also been there like the entire time. People who got to know him either as Chicago mayor or now as an Atlantic contributing columnist might not know that he was a key figure in the Clinton administration. Going back before that, he was a fundraiser for a critical race in 1980 as a 20-year-old. He's been in this game for a very long time. So he was always the one telling Clinton, slow down, slow down. So Bill Clinton, in some ways, had a bit of a populist message to him when he ran in 1992, but he had advisors around him like Rahm Emanuel saying, no, we need to slow down on that. We need to put, quote, points on the board. It's a very incrementalist approach where he believes that if you pass, what was the thing they were into? School uniforms in the 90s was like, and then it would be baggage fees. They're little tiny things that they would think they could appeal to the middle class with, rather than trying to take a more sweeping approach. So after that, he becomes a member of Congress. Then in 2006, he's the DCCC chairman. So he and Nancy Pelosi, basically elect the class of members of Congress that are going to then be the ones that are setting the agenda for Obama. Obama can try to do whatever he wants, but it's those blue dogs and those right-wing New Democrats that he's going to have to get through. And it was Rahm Emanuel who decided that those are the ones you want. And then he winds up being Obama's chief of staff at that critical 09-10 period. But he's somebody who uses his aggression only when he's attacking the left. Like he's famous for his profanity and for his toughness, but it's never deployed against the conservative wing of the party or against Republicans. For them, it's deals. It's let's sit down, let's figure this out. It's the left where he really kind of embodies what we know of as Rahm. And so that to me is the kind of fighting corporate center that AOC and the others are now in conflict with.
And so for people on the left, you say there's some lessons to be learned from that experience with Rahm Emanuel.
Right, for sure. And luckily for us, he's back now, and so we could even listen to some of his lessons. He headlined an Atlantic column recently, something like the elites need to be held accountable for what they've done wrong over the past. Yes, they should. He mentioned the Iraq War. Sure, we could start there. Rahm Emanuel actually ran as a supporter of the Iraq War. We have. Actually, there's Joe Biden is running in the 2020 campaign for the Democratic nomination after supporting this entire agenda. And so if you believe that Democrats had a hard time rallying a majority of the country because they were pushing this compromised agenda, why would you turn back to that precise same agenda in 2020 after it was rejected in 2016?
We only have about a minute left, but before we let you go, what is perhaps the most surprising thing that you found out over the course of working on this book?
Man, that's a good question. Well, it might be how just coming forward with the fight, just fighting, you might not win, but you end up creating something that winds up being consequential down the road. And it happened over and over and over again. Like the people who got behind Howard Dean, sure, they got beaten by the electable John Kerry. Democrats are great at nominating electable people who turn out not to be. But all of the people that helped create that Howard Dean campaign created the basis for the online fundraising and the distributed organizing that then gave rise to Obama in 2008, and then in its fullest expression, kind of the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign. Even fuller is the 2020 campaign, and reshaped the party. As you notice, now everybody brags about how many donors they have, not how much money they're raising.
Right. Well, the book is We've Got People, From Jesse Jackson to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, The End of Big Money and the Rise of a Movement. Ryan Grimm, it is a fascinating read, especially given the context that we find ourselves in today in this political landscape. Thank you so much for stopping by, Ryan.
Thanks for having me.